Today, I am announcing a further ambitious step in our government's plan to make housing more affordable for Canadians.
Today's changes to the Canada Mortgage Bond Program are going to make it more appealing for builders who have projects that are marginal, that have been yellow lighted, that now can be greenlit, that now can go ahead.
The federal government is unlocking another $20 billion in low-cost financing for the construction of rental housing. This is a change from the previous annual limit of $40 billion to $60 billion on its Canada Mortgage Bonds program. It's a change the federal government says will increase rental construction by 30,000 units per year. Now, this announcement comes coincidentally as BC Premier David Eby visits Ottawa to talk about housing, and Premier Eby joins me in the studio. Premier, nice to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
I don't know if you can take credit for that announcement, your presence, but you know, they say this will unlock a bunch of rental construction. It comes on housing accelerator announcements for Surrey and Burnaby that we've seen are going to go ahead. How helpful will these federal policies be for the housing crunch that your province is facing?
Well, the GST announcement was really good news for British Columbia. We had a bunch of market rental projects that were on hold, and it helps get them moving. The key for us is going to be making sure that this federal announcement, that other federal announcements map up with what we're doing provincially. This low-cost borrowing can couple up with our low-cost borrowing for construction, and we can have a huge impact if we work together. A bit of our frustration with the federal government has been that our programs aren't talking to each other. They have this municipal accelerator fund to support municipalities. We have housing targets for municipalities. They're different cities. And so if we can get them on the same page, we'll be much more effective. And that was part of the pitch to the federal government, is let's get working together.
So how do you do that? I mean, we've seen, it was shared on social media, letters from Minister Fraser to Burnaby and to Surrey saying, hey, congratulations, you're going to be approved for this if you go ahead with what you're promising. Is that helpful for a provincial government trying to coordinate all of this, or are you playing some bumper cars here?
Well, British Columbians have a basic expectation. They are facing, when they look for a place to rent, when they look for a place to buy, they can't find a place to live, even if they earn a decent income, and they're incredibly frustrated. Their expectation is local governments, provincial government, federal government, work together, solve this problem. And that's where our big opportunity lies. So today we announced housing targets for municipalities that we developed cooperatively with cities. The federal government has that accelerator funding where they can come in. And then you have local, provincial, and federal working together. It can deepen affordability. We can move a lot faster, and we have to. We added 250,000 people to our province in the last couple of years. That's massive pressure on housing. And so we have to move faster, and the opportunity is there. The discussion and some of the resolution I hope we came to was dedicating staff to really get our programs in line because people need fast action on housing.
Do you think that message was heard? Do you think the federal government's willing to do that? Because there's suddenly a new urgency in the city, and you may have noticed, on how to deal with housing and affordability. Was your input well received?
Yeah, I think the piece about working together on existing programs absolutely was. The part where I think we have more work to do and where I'm looking to the federal government on additional announcements is we have a lot of really cool projects happening in British Columbia, new models around using public land to build more affordable housing, healthcare land for healthcare workers, school board land for teachers and people who work at schools, using provincially owned land for attainable middle-income housing for purchase and for rent, partnering with Indigenous nations around building that middle-income housing. Really exciting announcements where we'll be able to deepen affordability and move faster if we have a strong federal partner. That's the piece where I think they're still doing reviews about how they can expand what they're doing, and I hope we'll be able to partner on those specific projects.
Right, because those wouldn't fit into, say, the housing accelerator box, so to speak. You need to find a way to do that, right?
Yeah, exactly. They do these big national programs that are, I mean, PEI is very different from British Columbia, the challenges and opportunities. And we're having to identify specific parcels, specific partners, big projects, tens of thousands of units of housing, which is all very exciting, but it doesn't quite fit into those big national programs. We need specific targeted attention to get them across the line, and I think the federal government can do it, and I think there's some interest in getting there.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like an unsolvable problem, because the idea of letting health workers live close to the hospital, teachers live close to the school in a way that's affordable for them is critical, really, to building communities.
Absolutely, and we've talked about there's a military base in Esquimalt, British Columbia. Here's an opportunity for the federal government to have, there's lots of land, to have housing for people who work on the base in that community, take pressure off. The port in Prince Rupert could be involved in housing. There's lots of opportunities for us to do more of this.
Okay, I want to switch topics, if I can, to the Canada Pension Plan. And you've seen your next door neighbor, Premier Danielle Smith, has announced that she would like to proceed with an Alberta pension plan, and she believes that she is entitled, or Alberta is entitled, to more than half of the assets in the Canada Pension Plan Investment Fund. What's British Columbia's position on that assessment?
Well, I saw that, and I have to say, in terms of what's on the minds of British Columbians right now, it's cost of living, housing, healthcare, public safety issues. That's the focus of our government. Alberta has other things that they're working on. If they're serious about moving in that direction, we're obviously going to have to be involved in that conversation. The CPP works well for British Columbians. It's provided good returns. It supports them in retirement. It has good support in our province, and it's not a direction that we're headed.
Right, but if they were to proceed, and if, as Alberta seems to think, they're entitled to those assets, it would affect the cost of living for British Columbians because premiums will go up for individuals and for companies, and retirement security is a core part of affordability. I mean, do you think this would be a good plan for the rest of the country? We've seen some premiers, such as Andrew Furey in Newfoundland and Labrador, come out against it. Where are you on it?
Well, I think, as provincial leaders, we need to stand up for the people in our province on the priorities that they have, and I guess that's what Danielle Smith is doing. If she presses on in this direction, BC will absolutely be at the table to make sure that that it doesn't come at the expense of British Columbians. I think that where the opportunities are for us, frankly, as provincial leaders right now around the issue of healthcare, we're all meeting in Nova Scotia about best practices on that. On the issue of housing, we're all seeing issues in our provinces. On the issue of public safety, the bail reform bill's in front of the Senate right now at the federal level to make a difference for public safety in our communities. I think focusing on those shared areas of interest rather than where we may disagree is going to be helpful. And ultimately, if she continues to push the pension issue because she thinks that's what Albertans need, then British Columbia is going to be there to make sure that we're looked after.
Do you think it's good for Canada to be having this conversation, to be having this potential showdown with Alberta if she proceeds?
Yeah, I think what's good for Canada is to find the areas where we have common interests and work on those things together. And there's always a push to find the things that we disagree on. And frankly, it's a time where we need real unity across the country. It's a time of global uncertainty, global inflation, huge pressure on Canadians around affordability and housing. And I think the more we focus on those issues, the more we'll be able to deliver for our communities on what they actually, and the people in our provinces about what they actually care about.
I want to switch to one more topic if I can, and it's the issue of Canada-India relations right now. I mean, the murder of Hardeep Singh Nijjar in your province and the ongoing police investigation here. You have been briefed by CSIS. What is your assessment of the position the government of Canada has taken, the allegation that India was involved potentially after seeing what you saw from CSIS?
Well, unfortunately, the briefing I received from CSIS is something called an open source briefing, which basically means anything that's in the newspaper. It's publicly available information, and so I have no great insider insight. This is one of my frustrations, frankly, and I've expressed to the Public Safety Minister and the Prime Minister during my meetings here, is the need for the federal government to find ways to share more information. They advise that the CSIS Act prevents CSIS from sharing that kind of information with provinces. If we're going to make sure that people are safe in our province, if we're going to make sure our elections are free from interference, if we're going to address transnational crime, we do need CSIS to be able to share that information with us, and both made the commitment that they are looking at the CSIS Act to make those reforms so that information can be shared. This is something we've been pushing them on for a number of years.
Have you had any conversations with the Prime Minister, his office, gotten any clarification for them about the strength of the evidence and the intelligence that they're basing this on? I mean, do you have doubts in what the government has done here?
Well, I know for myself as leader of a province that in order to stand up and make an announcement like that has such a profound effect on people. Like, this is wedding season for people many people in South Asian communities right now, thinking about going back to India, needing visas to go and visit friends and family. We have so many trade and economic relationships with India. I am sure the Prime Minister had very good information. For me, I want as much information as our province can get in order to respond to threats that are faced not just by expats from India, but people who have roots in Iran, people who have roots in Russia or Ukraine, people who have roots in China who are speaking out on issues in their home communities and are now worried maybe it's not safe to do that in British Columbia anymore, maybe it's not safe to do that in Canada. So we need to stand up for those folks. I need that information, but I don't want any information that'll compromise the criminal investigation. Ultimately, on this issue, we want the RCMP to do the investigation and bring those responsible to accountability in the criminal court.
The population makeup of the Lower Mainland of British Columbia in particular, I mean, you have communities there that could very well be targeted by some of these foreign states. I mean, there have been calls for protections for Sikh Canadians in particular in the wake of all of this. Do you think the security situation for members of certain diaspora communities is good enough at this point in time?
Well, there's certainly deep unease in these communities. So many people who thought, here's a safe space for me in Canada to speak out on these issues where at home I can't speak out about them. All of a sudden it feels like maybe that's not a safe thing to do anymore, and we need to restore that. In order to have a democracy, in order to have free speech, and for Canada to be a safe harbor, we need to provide that. I can say that I don't have the information that I need as Premier to ensure that we're providing that protection. My hope and expectation is that law enforcement does. But when we work with our chief electoral officer, for example, on making sure that our elections are free from foreign interference, we have limited access to information. And so it would be really helpful for the federal government to provide that amendment to the CSIS Act, to provide that information to us. We have those commitments from the federal government, and we'll be looking for that because I think we all have the same goal of ensuring that Canada is a free and open democracy where people are not interfered with by agents of foreign governments.
British Columbia Premier David Eby, it's nice to meet you. Thanks for coming into the studio.
Thanks for having me, David.
Thank you.